Good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me confirm that you hear me.
Yes, doctor, we can hear you.
Can you confirm that you are hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Let me apologize for the late start. On behalf of the Ministry of Water and Environment through the Water Resources Institute, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the 25th Water Resources Institute monthly webinar. This is one of the webinars that we are using to provide stakeholders information on what is happening in the sector in Uganda and globally. And for today, we are going to listen to a presentation on unlocking sustainable financing mechanisms, focusing on carbon credits. All of you are aware that carbon markets are really taking shape, and we would want to get information on how we can enter into this market where carbon credits are being traded. And this webinar is being organized collaboratively by the Ministry of Water and Environment through the Water Resources Institute, together with Grow Foundation and United Nations Development Program. And our presenter today is Mr. Tom Sengarama, who is the team leader for nature, climate, energy, and resilience at UNDP. And we'll be happy to listen to him. But before Tom takes the floor, we are going to give an opportunity to the country director of Grow Foundation to make remarks. After that, he will invite Tom to make the presentation. He will continue to moderate the discussions, and then we shall come in at the end to close the webinar. Otherwise, for those of you who would want to share the work you are doing, the innovations you are putting in place, we would want you to reach out to the Water Resources Institute so that we can schedule you and be able to present. Let me once again thank you for sparing time to be part of us. And now let me hand over to Laban. Laban is the country director for Grow Foundation in Uganda. And Laban, after that, after your remarks, you will invite Tom to make a presentation, and you will continue moderating the session. Over to you, Laban, and thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Calist, for those remarks there. I don't know if I want also to confirm if people can hear me out there.
Yes, you're very audible.
Yes, thank you very much. So, colleagues, I want to just give a brief about what Grow Foundation is and why we are probably here today, so that we can give chance to the speaker to come in and also give his remarks. First of all, I would also extend our sincere apologies for the delay or towards this program. We should have started about 30 minutes ago. But I'm sure all of you are asking yourselves what Grow Foundation is, or who is Grow Foundation. In this case, Uganda, in this case, when we say Grow Uganda, it's an acronym of greenhouse gas reforestation offsets. So we are a social impact organization that alleviates poverty at grassroots level through unlocking climate finance. What we basically do is that we create a financial product, and in this case, these are carbon certificates, and through which we obtain or sell or make sales, and we focus to reinvest the money back into the communities. Here, we focus on afforestation and reforestation. We focus on community development through programs like food security, WASH, education, and skilling. We do then green jobs creation. We have a team of people that we work with. We do ESG compliance, CSR, and sustainability, which also comes in with capacity building programs. We also have tools that we deploy that help companies or organizations to track what they have done to achieve on their ESG, that is the environmental, social, and governance. We also work hand in hand with partners to have workshops and events. For example, we have an ongoing program called the Green Talks Uganda, where we have partnered with a couple of people or organizations that we work with. We We also use climate finance to scale traditional charity and social impact projects, thus achieving the sustainable development. So we basically grow forests and certify their carbon offset and sell these certificates to companies that meet their goals and use their proceedings to finance. So in this, like I said, we fund food security and all that we have seen through direct access to nutritious and sustainable food sources. We have programs in education and skilling where we fund projects like, for example, renovation of schools and improve educational facilities. In the programs of water, we have worked with communities like in Katuba village, where we have managed to refurbish at least boreholes, and in Bugisu sub-region, where we have also refurbished a number of boreholes. In this context today, we're looking at the urgency of the carbon markets. Here, we're looking at climate change threatening Uganda's agriculture and water security for the economy. But the carbon markets attract investment in climate mitigation projects. So if we're looking at the vast opportunities in forestry, in renewable energy, and waste to energy, the carbon markets are projected to even exceed 1 trillion by 2050. So what is the urgent action, or what is the urgency of action here today? Uganda must align, of course, with the climate finance strategies, where we have seen the COP29 commitments. We know that now COP30 has come up with the presidency, announcing the presidency and the secretariat. We also look at private sector engagement in this crucial for scaling products and creating impact. What is the landscape like? In Uganda, we are looking at 2 million plus hectares available for carbon credit projects. This is, of course, based on the information we're receiving from the ministry, from NFA, where we have key sectors, like we talked about them earlier. What are the challenges being faced? Of course, we're looking at limited private sector involvement. Mostly, this sector is NGO-driven, so which means that there's weak market infrastructure, where we are not seeing a formal trading platform. But all these are going to be worked on, I believe, since there's clear engagement with the ministry. Because as you look at the carbon credits global market report, this is blowing up to $79.2 billion by 2028, which is what we are looking at. So why should the private sector be essential or even involved anyway? To provide financing and investment and development of the market infrastructure. For example, we have seen countries that have now national carbon exchanges. We are looking at driving technology and innovation in tracking and trading. So as we are looking at also government as a regulator, and of course, maybe being the large off-taker in this case, we are looking at government's role establishing a national carbon trading framework, which of course we know that in the long run, these are all discussions that are already happening. The carbon exchange, the Uganda carbon exchange, we are seeing this now also coming up like any other foreign or forex discussion. So as I conclude my remarks, we are looking at where would we look at as strategic investment areas. Are we playing in the voluntary carbon markets? What about the compliancy markets that we're looking at? What is the blue carbon, the biodiversity on the credits? These are all key policy and investment considerations that we should look at. So we are looking forward to short-term, long-term, and of course, medium-term actions and recommendations. And on our side as Grow Foundation, we are looking at the short-term being the implementation of the Uganda Carbon Market Framework. We are looking at the launch of the National Carbon Trading Platform. We are looking at what are the tax incentives for the carbon credit investors, so that we can see how do we establish this new framework of the public-private carbon finance fund that is coming up, which is also involving communities. For the medium and long term, we shall definitely have to share, but we need to know that the call to action is to engage, invest, and transform. So that is what I would leave our dear listeners in today, so that we can know that over these people who have found interest in this discussion, we are willing to open up and have clear discussions. So maybe it's at this juncture, if maybe Mr. Tom, if you can be able to come and share with us your presentation on how are we going to be able to unlock these alternative financing mechanisms that are focusing on carbon markets, or maybe over to Francis, if Tom is, I'm just trying to check if Tom can hear us. Mr. Tom, are you on?
Yes, I am on and I can hear you and I have followed everything you have said.
Yes, thank you. So now it is over to you to tell us now on the topic discussion, and then we shall open up maybe a few 2 or 3 questions from the audience as I think we guide this discussion. Over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laban, for your brief introduction and for the background information that you have shared. As I have been introduced, I am Tom Sengarama. I work with the UNDP as the Climate Change and Natural Resources Advisor, and I'm going to not really to teach you about carbon markets, but to stimulate a conversation on how Uganda can unlock carbon markets to expand the source of climate financing for the country. Laban, I don't know whether you wanted a PowerPoint presentation shared or we can just have a discussion.
I think at this moment is let's have an interaction, and then maybe we can, you will share the PowerPoint and we shall share with the individuals through their emails.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Why are we concerned about this? One, we all know that climate change is one of the biggest threats that we are faced today in the world, and particularly in Uganda and other sub-Saharan African countries, where we are seeing changes in temperatures, temperatures rising, rainfall patterns changing, wind speeds changing, and more destructive rains coming and destroying infrastructure. And yet, most of these countries don't have the required financing mechanisms or the required financing muscle to cope and adapt some of these changes. And from literature, we see that these costs, the climate change costs, are going to increase. For instance, when you read World Bank reports, you realize that the cost of inaction may more than double by 2030 if we don't invest in climate adaptation. And the question remains, where do we get this money? Most of the money that has been coming in for climate mitigation and adaptation has come from outside, almost to the tune of 90% plus. And even when we develop our NDCs, for instance, in Africa, the total cost of NDCs is estimated at 2.8 trillion by 2030. And for Uganda, 28.1 billion is budgeted to address our mitigation and adaptation actions by 2030. Out of this, Uganda committed to invest 15%. Now the question is, where does the balance come from? So it's because of the need of this huge need for financing our climate mitigation and climate adaptation actions that ideas around carbon markets, around green bonds, around sustainability bonds, and others came into play to try to trigger or to unlock other financing mechanisms that these countries can use based on their natural resources, based on their comparative advantage, and based on their investments in the natural capital. Now, in the interest of those who are not very familiar with carbon markets are just trading systems in which carbon credits are traded, sold and bought. And one tradable carbon, I mean, it's about if you have a carbon stock, how do you convert into a resource that is going to be sold on the market, and then the proceeds from this is invested in investments that help you to, first of all, enhance your carbon sink, but also reduce emissions, and also be able to demonstrate your carbon, your green credentials if you are an industry. And over years, this market has developed, but we have had challenges in the past where the internationally agreed mechanisms had not been approved. In 2029, in COP29, we saw one of the major outcomes of COP29 was the approval of Article 6, which has Article 6.2.3 that provides a mechanism for cooperation between countries, between multilateral organizations, to trade carbon from one source to another, one country to another. And under this, now countries are able to negotiate and trade. And then Article 6.4, where we have a mechanism, where the mechanism were clearly defined on how you define the baselines for your carbon and how you demonstrate your carbon credentials so that you can be able to trade in carbon markets. Now, with these cooperative approaches, international corporations that are involved in a carbon trade are able to trade what we call international transfer mitigation outcomes, and which help you to, one, demonstrate that you have invested in a carbon trade, and you are able to demonstrate that you have contributed in reducing the emissions from one country, from one part of the world to another, and therefore you are allowed to invest or to pollute in a way that you don't exceed the net zero. So you have a decentralized approach that help you to demonstrate that kind of investment. And then the Article 6.4 is helping you to look at this, to look at a mechanism that helps you to have a centralized approach that is comparable, and you are able to demonstrate that this is the baseline I am working with, and these are the reductions I am contributing towards, and these are the crediting mechanisms that I am using under the UNFCCC. So, but in order for you to do this, the country needs to be ready. One of the things the countries need to put in place is having the regulations and the guidelines that allow them to trade in carbon markets. Fortunately, for the case of Uganda, the regulations that have been developed have been, I think they are now ready, and guidelines are now ready. And these will provide for instance, what does it mean to structure a carbon market? What are the tax incentives that are involved? How does the market work? How are we registering the emissions? How are we defining the baselines? And how are we monitoring the investments and the trade? So once that is in place, then you are able to negotiate a market that is going to allow you to trade, to define, and also the pricing mechanism. How do we define the prices of this, of the carbon, for instance? How much do we buy a ton? How much does a ton cost? And what does it mean in terms of investment for this carbon stock to be maintained? All that needs to be well defined if you are going to have a credible carbon trade mechanism. And I think in the regulations that have just been approved, all this and guidelines, all this is defined. And this means that Uganda is ready to start negotiating the carbon, to negotiate with big companies and other institutions to trade their carbon. What do we need to, how do we define, what are some of the challenges that have hindered this from happening? One, I think one of the things that we have observed over the years is the lack of clarity on how you define the baseline, how you define the pricing, and whether there is an exchange for some of these countries to negotiate, an exchange platform for negotiating the prices. And if, for instance, Uganda is going to effectively trade in carbon, I think it is very important for us to interest ourselves in cooperating with the other neighboring countries and come up with an exchange platform that is going to help negotiations so that people and forest owners and others are not exploited. But in order to do that, we need to define what are our carbon stocks. So we have forests, we have carbon on agricultural land, we have carbon in water, we have carbon in wetlands. How do we quantify our carbon? Once we have a good quantification, we have a good registry of our carbon stocks, then we are able to say, this is the stock we have, these are the owners, and these are the trading platforms that we have to engage in the trade. Otherwise, one of the challenges that has happened is the underpricing of carbon. And this has largely happened under the voluntary carbon mechanisms. So how do we bring together the voluntary negotiations together with the compliance negotiations so that we harmonize the pricing so that the private forest owners or private carbon sellers and the public carbon stock, the pricing is harmonized and nobody is cheated. I think those are some of the things as we start implementation of the carbon regulations. Those are the conversations that we are going to start having to make sure that this, the trade, the unlocking of this trade does not leave some of the players exploited. But also in doing this, we need also to look at other related trades. We have the green bonds. How do we tie green bonds into the traditional carbon markets so that as you are negotiating, as the countries are negotiating green bonds, they are also they are looking at it as part of the carbon trade, and it is adding to the bulk of the negotiations that we are having, that countries are having between big private carbon buyers and other big multilateral organizations that may be interested in this kind of trade. So I think those are some of the questions we need to be asking ourselves, and we need to be preparing our minds to start discussing as we unlock this carbon market. There is no doubt that for countries like Uganda with huge carbon stocks and other developing countries, carbon trade, once we have the regulations in place, once we have the baselines well defined, once we have the registries in place, once we have defined the tax regimes, then there's no doubt that this is going to become a game changer in mobilizing climate finance going forward. So those are some of the points I wanted to raise and to open the discussion, then we can respond to specific questions. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful, Mr. Tom. At least we, on an overview, someone can capture, this so-called alien market that people are trying to get into. We are seeing from the World Bank reports on how the bonds have been issued as alternative, capital raising instruments. We saw the discussions from COP, those who were in COP 29 in Azerbaijan, the approval of this Article 6 that came in really to create the direction right from the COP in Egypt to the COP in Dubai to the COP in Azerbaijan. Now we are going to Brazil. Are we sure that we're going to see the breakdown of the 300 billion US dollars they talked about as the annual coming in of the resources that are going to be mobilized? We are seeing the regulations and guidelines discussion, and this is a very good direction for our country to see that at least as we are coming into this market, we are trying to streamline the market. Now, you talked about the exchange platforms. You talked about the validation and the verification processes, or maybe how we can do what you can call maybe a project database. Now, I see people have started asking in questions. And normally the questions that we are seeing, I'm going to have a question from Namanya Ronald, who says, how is carbon stock determined? And then we have also Kefa is talking about the issue of insurance companies. How do we then see? We are seeing at global level, the alliance, the reinsurers, that like they are playing into this kind of market. How do we see the agri-consortium coming in for the forestry or the agriculture discussion? Then we have Robert Kalisa, who also says that most of the smallholder farmers have unregistered customary land. How will this affect the trading potential? So I want to read the three questions for you once again, Mr. Tom, and maybe you will help, because I requested colleagues to send in their clarifications, comments, questions, whatever it is today that we can dissect. Like I've said, one is talking about...
there. Joshua, there is also another question on the role of UNDP.
Yes. I've seen. I'm just going to begin with maybe we can tackle one by one. I don't know, Tom, if you can be able to access the chat and maybe you see, but I think we can begin from the role of UNDP, maybe in this case, and then we come in and talk about the issue of the insurance coming out, and then maybe we see the carbon check if we have clarity there, or if you need more support or more guidance, maybe we can have what we can refer to the ministry, which is under the Department of, I think, Climate Change, and the Water Resources Institute, which is also here. I'm sure has experts that can guide us. So over to you, Tom, once again. You're seeing that people are asking all these questions. Do you think this one, our webinar, is enough? Oh, okay, to you, Tom, and we see.
No, thank you very much. The role of UNDP. One, UNDP is a facilitator in this process. UNDP Uganda has, and also UNDP in other countries, has supported countries in coming up with the framework, with the regulations and the guidelines, and has also supported the building capacity of partners to understand what this trade is all about. So our role as UNDP is catalytic, to catalyze the thinking, to catalyze the conversations around the carbon markets, but also to support in establishing the building blocks, the guidelines, the regulations, so that we can help in unlocking this market. So that is our role as UNDP. On carbon, on customary and land that where people don't have well-defined tenure rights, I think under the Article 6, there is a mechanism for protection of indigenous people and local communities, and also ensuring that the rights of landowners is protected. So in negotiating this trade, it will be important that as a result of the emergence of this lucrative trade, people are not displaced from their land. And this has been well articulated in one of the sections of the Article 6, where the rights of indigenous people, the rights of local communities are enshrined and protected in negotiation of these carbon markets. So if you have private land, I mean, if you are on a piece of land and you can demonstrate that you have established a carbon sink, then you should qualify to participate in the negotiations. Now, frameworks will definitely differ as the actual market situation unfolds. And this is, again, one of the roles of government to act as custodian and protector of rights of those who are vulnerable. So I am sure, and that's why there is a regulation and guidelines. So I am sure in the implementation, government will ensure that some of these rights are protected. On the role of insurance companies, I am not a very good expert on insurance, but for every trade, there are risks. For instance, if I have my square mile of forest and I have registered and I have entered a contract with a big company to pay me a certain amount of money per hectare or per ton of carbon, then prolonged drought comes in, then fire comes in and guts down the whole forest. How do we now recalculate the carbon stock that I have? Those are some of the things, again, we need to start discussing to see what does it mean for a carbon market that is based on a natural resource like a forest against natural disasters like fire and others. So those are things that I think insurance companies will start thinking about, and also the traders, to make sure that these losses are mitigated. But I don't really have a straight answer on this. Then on agri-consortium, I think one of the big advantages, one of the big markets we are going to have, especially in a country like Uganda, is quantifying carbon on agricultural land. Because there is a lot of carbon on agriculture based on land use practices, the soil carbon, how you are protecting it, based on the vegetation that you have. For instance, if you are growing coffee or other perennial crops, it's possible that this carbon can be quantified and an agreement entered on how you are going to sustain it, so that a flow of carbon credits can be awarded to a farmer and you benefit. And when you're a consortium, it is even better, because then you are able to aggregate the quantities of carbon that you have. And maybe for clarity, this carbon, it's calculated in carbon dioxide equivalent, which is measured in tons. So it can be carbon from forests. It can be carbon dioxide equivalent from avoided methane. For instance, if you are a livestock farmer and you are employing technologies that trap carbon from methane, and you are able to demonstrate that, then you can sell it as a carbon credit, so that we avoid carbon emissions from livestock. Or if it is peatland, you can still quantify the amount of carbon in peat, convert it into tons of carbon, then you sell it. So again, we have said that the beginning point is having proper baselines. And a lot of investment will have to be made in quantifying the carbon stock that the country has in different sectors. And then putting in place a mechanism for you to demonstrate sustainable supply of that quantities of carbon that has been quantified, for you to deserve having sustainable payment for your carbon stock. So all that, there's a lot of work that is going to be done all that is already being done to unlock this market, but also to sustainable benefit from this market. Have I answered all the questions?
Yes, wonderful, wonderful. We still get, of course, you know, with this carbon market discussion, you are going to understand that people are going to come in with a lot of questions. We are seeing Kayanja, Emmanuel coming in with, you know, the asking about the pricing, and then we are seeing Loy coming in with how do private companies in renewable energy and systems benefit. But to me, I think this gives us
maybe
yes.
on this one, when you are investing in renewable energy, for instance, there is another form of carbon trade that UNDP has been testing. For instance, there is a lot of investment in solar, the off-grid solar. How do we aggregate that through distributed renewable energy? There is a mechanism that is going to be issuing distributed renewable energy certificates that is converted into money equivalent to certificates for carbon based on how much energy you're producing and how much carbon is being avoided by you using solar. But also the other thing that Uganda as a country needs to also venture in and think through critically is the country is almost 100% renewable in terms of energy production and energy supply. How do we cost that carbon avoided and build a case for the country to earn carbon credits from being a renewable energy country? For instance, if there are countries that are still reliant on coal, can they support efficient distribution and use of this energy and calculate this carbon dioxide, this carbon avoided, and cost it as one of their reductions on the overall carbon emissions globally? So those are some of the discussions that really need to start happening to see how countries like Uganda start getting carbon money to incentivize their investment, their huge investment in renewables.
Yeah, so this is really very, very insightful. And I think this now gives, if someone has walked into this room today and probably had a little knowledge about this carbon markets development, I'm sure now there has been a step brought forward, but this is still not enough for some of us to really, understand, who really want to dive in too deeply to understand about the markets. And I think this is a call now to
Laban,
yes, please.
Before that, there's this question I had not seen,
yes,
where they're asking about the cost of 1 ton of CO2.
Yes, the pricing. Yes,
the pricing. The pricing in Uganda, at least from the market I know, has been very low, starting from $10 per ton. But again, in order for us to benefit from this market, in order for countries like Uganda to benefit from this market, there has to be a deliberate effort to promote collective bargaining so that we attract big pricing for carbon, because there are places where a ton goes as much as $100, and here you are selling it at $10. So definitely, if you enter into a long-term contract and at that price, and you have leased your carbon stock for 30 years, definitely you are not gaining, and the chances that along the way you will have issues with sustaining that contract may be high. So it's very important right from the word go for us to do a market survey, understand the average market, and also understand how you are structuring your market agreements so that it doesn't bring issues in the middle of agreement implementation, especially when you later realize that I am being given $10 per ton, my neighbor is being given 20, another one is being given 50. How do we standardize? So again, being a nascent market in this country, those are some of the things that we have not yet defined, and that's why the regulation should guide in structuring the carbon market to make sure that nobody is cheated. Thank you.
Yes, yes, indeed. Nobody should be left behind in terms of SDGs. And we know that SDG 1 is one of the most important that we have tried to understand, and that is chasing poverty. And I think most of the people who have come into this discussion are really looking at the economic sense. What comes out in, what does the numbers, or what do the numbers say? So as we are seeing Ministry of Water coming up with the Water and Environment Week in March, we want to see some of these discussions coming out clearly. We want to know that at least there is a space where we can work and find information, a hub, because most of the smallholder farmers down there have no idea of how this discussion is going to go or fold up. Most of even the people at technical level who are in some of these entities are still there's still that information gap. So as the guidelines and regulations come into the public, I think we also need to enhance more on the information sharing. I'm not seeing any more questions. I think people, Ndugu Tom, you have, I think, really made people understand much about the whole carbon cycle, and this is a good thing. Whenever you see an audience not coming up with questions, or the chat is at least at rest, it means that we are on the right path. I would maybe at this juncture allow me to hand over the microphone to the Ministry of Water and Environment on some of the issues that were concerning government, some of the issues that were concerning the guidelines and the regulations, on some of the issues that were concerning capacity building and more awareness. Such platforms, how do we utilize them? And we know, can we have more trainings? Can we see that even we can have certified programs on people who can bring out or build the capacity of people? So I think, Francis, I can hand over to you, and then you can guide us on the part of where from that side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laban. For the case of the input from the ministry, I could probably call Dr. Callis to make some clarification. Laban, I was requesting, as you're waiting for Dr. Callis to come in, maybe Tom can throw more light on the issue of the regulations and guidelines. We understand there are global guidelines. How do the Ugandan guidelines fit into the global guidelines and also the continental guidelines for Africa?
Okay, thank you. The beauty with the Uganda's regulations and guidelines is that they are quite recent. And in the process of developing these guidelines, Uganda benchmarked with other countries in Africa and other places, and they also took note of the international guidelines to make sure that there is alignment. And therefore, the guidelines have followed the guidance that are implementing Article 6.2 and Article 6.4 and other related guidelines on the carbon market. So there is high confidence of proper alignment, but also these guidelines were developed based on the Uganda's Climate Change Act 2021. And therefore section, I think it was section 9 of the Climate Change Act, and the process ensured that there is proper alignment with the national law and proper alignment with the international guidelines and regulations. So there is no doubt that Uganda's regulations and guidelines are well aligned with the best practices available today.
Yes, thank you. Of course, now we are receiving in new messages. I'm seeing people are have now really brought in. So I'm seeing we have a question or messages from. I saw Dan somewhere.
Yeah, I can see a question on success stories.
Yes.
Yes. I think a country like Ghana has already signed up to 800 million US dollars on carbon markets. I think they signed last year or the year before with some big companies from, I think from Switzerland, who have really bought huge chunks of carbon from Ghana. I think Tanzania also recently signed some contracts, and there are a number of other countries, but Ghana stands out as one of the countries that has really signed big contracts in this space. And so far, the implementation of these contracts is moving on well. There are many other countries which have tried at small scale, but Ghana comes out. Tanzania, yes, we need to see, because for them their agreements are recent, but they also managed to win big contracts on a carbon market. Those are the ones I can point to. But there are others, especially in Latin America, where they are really very successful contracts that are being implemented.
Okay, yeah, I think also that we have also seen, I think the World Bank reports giving us some of these, maybe I can say bonds and whatever, how much has been issued, what type of bonds. I think we are seeing more and more success stories as policymakers are making it so easy for these markets to be regulated. I am also seeing someone, Sanyu, asking if these guidelines are set and ready for use. I am seeing Dan, like I said, there was a gentleman called Dan who also asked in the chat that what are the specific strategies or projects that Uganda could focus on within the carbon markets. I think those ones have been discussed really. There are a wide number of projects and strategies. This was all explained. I don't know if maybe Tom, you have anything, maybe closing remarks or whatever it is, as we're waiting for Dr. Calist maybe to also give us the remarks from the ministry on the responses of what people have really talked about.
Yeah, thank you very much. For Sanyo, I think the guidelines are already, I think the regulations have been gazetted. So I think we are almost ready to go, but there are a lot of discussions that are going to happen to help us better understand the market, and also be able to structure implementation mechanisms that are going to better unlock this market. Because as you realize, this is a new market for Uganda, and there are many unanswered questions that we are going to continue researching on and continue coming up with the guidance and solutions. So this is a moving conversation, and Laban, thanks very much. So as a way of closing remarks, Laban, thanks very much for organizing these talks. It was a pleasure for me to delve into this new discussion, this new market instrument that is very critical for unlocking climate financing for this country. And I look forward really to participating in future discussions but also to working with the team, with you in researching and coming up with more innovative approaches on how we are going to catalyze and accelerate this market in Uganda. It's a real pleasure, and as UNDP, we are really very committed to continue accompanying not only the government of Uganda, but also civil society organizations who are interested in this market, but also partnering with the private sector to bring clarity and to catalyze the brokering of some of these market instruments. So thanks very much and have a wonderful weekend.
Yes, thank you too. I think, colleagues, now we are going to open up to now, how do we as individuals, as organizations, what would be the certification process maybe like? These are all the discussions we need to see in Tom that people are asking us as we as we keep putting up these platforms for people to share. Most of them don't understand, and of course these are things as private sector we are trying to come up with, and of course we shall share. I'm going to maybe briefly see if I can talk people through the certification process, because we at the global level, when you see companies going through from PDD, the project design development stage, some companies are taking even more than 2 to 3 months, even up to 5 designing projects. And then from then you see people now looking for verification and then validation, and you're seeing that what are the key issues that come up at the validation level, at the verification level of this project that has been registered. We are seeing that independent validators are coming in from different continents. Recently, we saw validators from Carbon Check, I think, coming in from India to validate or verify a project here in Uganda. And then we don't understand at a certain point where we are seeing where does the like of Vera gold standard, where the global operating standard operating procedures coming in. So people are still having a lot of questions from the point of the project development design stage, and then the validation and verification stage, even before you look at the issuance stage. So these are all things, I think, Tom, we need to be open as we are doing research and R&D. And maybe to the Ministry of Water and Environment. This is mostly now going to the Water Resources Institute. How do we then create, I would say, training programs that people can come in and even do pilot flagship projects? We have seen in NDP4 where they have put Green Industrial Park. And this, I think, is going to be piloted in the northern eastern part of Uganda. That is in Kabong. How is it going to be able to see that this project as a flagship project? How is it going to be listed on either the global or the national markets? This is all what we are trying to zero down and understand, Tom. Maybe I know I said you make your last remarks, but these are sensitive questions that come up. The complexity of the complexity of the whole process of coming up with a certified project. Is UNDP going to come in and help us on the processes of maybe training, capacity building, maybe help also the government on compliance through the climate finance unit? I think I know there is a unit under the Ministry of Finance. As we come up from as we drink from your fountain of knowledge, maybe come back to us and tell us those 1, 2, 3, 4 issues, maybe, Tom, before you run away for the weekend. Over to you, Tom.
I thought I had closed my participation. Yeah, thanks very much, Laban. One, we recognize that this is a nascent market. We know that especially the actors within Uganda are all trying to understand the market and are all trying to figure out how they can participate. And some of the questions that have come up which point to that. As UNDP, we have accompanied the government of Uganda in developing the regulations and the guidelines. We are going to discuss with the Climate Change Department and and also try to work together with the other actors to identify the capacity gaps. And once that is very clear, then together with the government, we should be able to structure a capacity building program that we can, together with other partners, support to make sure that the country is ready and the actors are ready to participate in this market. So yes, the aspect of following up capacity building is important, and I think it is within our interest that we get it right, that we bring in the expertise from other countries where this has happened. We build on the experiences, we avoid mistakes of what other countries have faced, so that when we roll with the government and other stakeholders, we are implementing a financing mechanism that is well thought through and where and inclusive, and where all actors feel comfortable participating. So we shall continue in these discussions, and also we shall continue working with the government to identify capacity gaps and address them.
Okay, thank you really very much, Tom, for your time. I know it is a tight schedule for you today. Maybe now we can you can allow us cross over to the hosts. This is the Water Resources Institute. You can allow us now go to the ministry where we are having the Water and Environment Week in March. Doctor, we have been waiting for you. There are very many questions. There are very many inquiries, clarifications, but I think now you can guide us from here. Thank you. Over to you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much, Laban. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to thank our speakers. Tom, thank you very much for sharing. And Laban, also thank you very much for moderating. I can only say that this is the first time actually that we are getting to host a webinar talking about carbon markets. I think as Tom has already mentioned, this is a new area and we are trying to see how we can do things right. Already we have the law, the Climate Change Act, we have a policy, we have regulations that have been gazetted, the guidance have been developed. So what we are going to is the implementation. And I think as has already been mentioned, our Climate Change Department is really taking lead in this. But there are many, many things that we need to know. There are many things we need to learn as people who would want to participate in this market. And I can only say, let's just prepare to move this journey together. Once the guidelines have gone out and we start disseminating them, then we shall identify areas where we're supposed to work. Issue of capacity building is the key. Issue of how to access this fund is going to be key. How to determine, for example, carbon credit, the verification and all of that. I think as Laban has indicated, we already have a number of organizations who have experience in this. Grow Foundation has been working on this for some time, as Laban indicated in the presentation. But there are many other organizations that we'll be working with, of course, UNDP, Tom and your team. So on behalf of the Ministry of Water and Environment and the Water Resources Institute, I want to thank all of you for being part of this session. I can only say the journey has started. Let's work on this journey together. Let's move together so that we run as we do things. As we mobilize resources, we are talking about innovative financing. When we talk about the work being coordinated by Climate Change Unit, Ministry of Finance, we are trying to see how do we take advantage of climate financing. And climate financing is coming in different forms, and of course, through carbon credits is one of the means. We're also looking at it as a way of enabling us to fund different projects. So again, I want to thank you. I want to thank the team at the Water Resources Institute, Gwendolyn, Francis, and the rest of the team for organizing this webinar. And of course, Grow Foundation for partnering with the team to bring UNDP on board to present. I want us to end at this point and only to request those who would want to share what you are doing on different topics, reach out to the Water Resources Institute, express your interest, submit your write-up in form of abstract, and then we shall arrange and schedule you. As a reminder, we hold this monthly webinar on the last Friday of every month from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So we have the 2 hours of engagement where we have a presenter making a presentation for about 30 minutes, and then we have discussions. Otherwise, I want to thank you and wish you a nice weekend. Let's meet again next month when we will be having another webinar, but also to remind you that in March, we are going to have the Uganda Water and Environment Week from 17th to 21st of March, where we shall have a lot of engagements. So I want to invite you to join in. We'll be having prevent activities, including a walk, which will start from Bulisa up to the way to the ministry headquarters, and will end on 14th of March. So come and join us. If you need more information, reach out to us. The contacts are indicated in the call for the invitation for the webinar. Thank you very much and wish you a nice day.
Yeah.